Captains of Industry, brought to you by Airtel.
Welcome back. You're watching Captains of Industry. Now, Ernst Young has looked at a variety of economic trends. We spoke about them earlier before the break. They'll define global finance in the year ahead. They believe that global IPO activity will remain slow, that private equity will give a big push to real estate and technology, and that more companies will come together through mergers and acquisitions. After 160 years on the continent, Ernst Young is poised to provide technical support to those companies penetrating Africa. Ajen Sita is going to lead this team as Ernst Young's CEO for Africa. As you know, he joined the firm in 1993, made partner in 1999, and also an entrepreneurial services leader in 2001. He's our captain of industry tonight. Your love affair with entrepreneurship, beginning in 2001. Tell me about that.
Well, I think it goes back even further than that, and that's coming from a family background of traders. So growing up for most of my life, surrounded by family and friends who ran small businesses, got me into the entrepreneurial community quite early on. So my passion has always been to work with young and fast-growing entrepreneurs who are looking to grow their businesses, not just in a country, but frankly across multiple geographies. There's also very clear in my mind that if we are to get out of the current financial crisis that we're in, it's entrepreneurs who will get us out. They are the ultimate risk takers in any community. They see opportunity even when economic times are quite tough. So through our World Entrepreneur Program that I've been involved in over the last number of years, you know, we've been exposed to some really outstanding people who found innovation and new ideas where people have thought maybe markets are saturated or there's no customer demand for it. And one continues to be inspired by these people to know that you can create new things, you can create jobs, and you can grow.
Is it a fair comment when people say we don't have enough entrepreneurs in Africa? Because some would argue being an entrepreneur is intrinsic to surviving Africa, where so many governments have failed people on basic issues of service delivery. We're all having to cope in one way or another, and by nature, Africans are entrepreneurs.
Well, I think you said we've had to survive. So I think we've got a lot of survivalist mentality, which is a key ingredient for entrepreneurs. You know, I've heard someone say that the first job of any entrepreneur in your first few years of business is to survive. So you might say we've got the right ingredients. The truth of the matter, though, is we create lots of small, medium enterprises right across the continent. And what we haven't been good at is converting those SMEs into larger entrepreneurial businesses. So the kinds of businesses that employ between 50 and 200 people, the kinds of businesses that have multiple operations in different locations. It's that community of business that actually is the largest employer of people when you look at entrepreneurs around the world. So the SME sector, whilst important because it gets people out of a situation of hopelessness, as it were, tends to create very few jobs. It doesn't create the scale at which the next generation, and that's what we're failing. So I think more needs to be done to provide the coaching and mentoring of SMEs to bring them into that next phase that they can grow medium-sized businesses, which are large employers.
So somebody would look at you and say, you come from a family of traders, you come from a community of traders, so why are you in an expensive grey suit sitting here being a corporate head?
So one might look at large organizations like an Ernst Young and think it's very corporate on the outside. The reality is we're a very entrepreneurial organization. You pointed out earlier that we've operated in this country, in this continent, in fact, for 160 years. And you can't operate for that period of time if you're not continually regenerating, continually innovating, and bringing about new ideas. So what attracts me to Ernst Young is an opportunity to play across this continent and not just in a local market, an opportunity to bring that entrepreneurial flair to make a difference to the 1 billion people, hopefully, across Africa.
In the near future, would we see Ajen Sita remodeled as a business owner, as opposed to a big boss in a boardroom?
That's a discussion I'm sure my wife will have a say in, so I can't give you the answer on that right now. I would say to you, I very much feel like a business owner today. You know, Ernst Young is growing into new territories. I've set up offices in the last year in Cameroon, Angola, South Sudan. We've just planted a flag there last week. You can't get more entrepreneurial than that. And for as long as there's still growth and for as long as I see opportunity, I think you're going to see me here for a while.
I'm glad you mentioned your wife. How important is she in the decisions that you make about business, in managing the frustrations of the business?
I think I'm one of those very fortunate few to have a wife who does understand the business world that I operate in. Being a chartered accountant herself, has got strong empathy or understanding for what we do. And she would say to you probably that I take too much of work home. So this is not in the literal sense of actually working at home, but carrying a lot of my aspirations and my ambitions home. So she's the one who certainly keeps me balanced, focused and grounded on being clear about what's important when we deal with people across a large continent.
What's important to you outside of Ernst Young?
Family. I'm fortunate enough to have a wife and 2 young kids. They're a daughter who's 10 years old and a son who's 7. These are people who believe the world is their oyster. They keep me fully engaged in the weekends. So I spend a lot of family time. But beyond that, with a very creative wife over the last number of years, she's tried to bring out that creativity in me. So in this last year, she's got me painting, which is, she's the artist in the family, but I've now also taken to painting. I've now produced a few pieces. My young son of 7 believes that I should be selling them, so he's clearly developed the entrepreneurial flair very early.
Or just a love for daddy?
Well, he's, I think it's more the entrepreneurship because he's also painted his first piece and sold it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm quite impressed. I might have him as my agent.
So what sort of things do you paint? Because I do know that Ernst Young as a company is a great supporter of the arts, and internationally you've acquired works from people like Monet and Cézanne. So there is that element within the corporation. Within you?
Certainly any inspiration that I've got in painting has been from my wife, and typically it's been landscapes. I love the African bush. We spend a lot of time as a family in the game reserves, enjoying nature. So painting sceneries of sunrise and sunsets, or just a tree, a lonely tree in the bush, is what interests me, and that's what I would spend time.
But I don't know about this painting thing. I'd have to be the judge. So next time we chat, if you could just bring the painting, let's show it to the viewers and let's have a fair assessment. But what does painting do for you, just in terms of calming your mind, maybe thinking outside the box? I don't know.
It's actually just an opportunity for true creative time, not to be unhindered, to experiment, to play, to see a light-hearted side of life. So I wouldn't be as keen as you to bring my paintings into the studio, but it's a time for me to have fun, to switch off, to look at a canvas, to see what I can create, to be surprised myself with what I can do at the end of it. And that's what I enjoy.
When you're not painting, you're interested in the stars, and I mean technically, astronomy.
Yes.
How did that happen?
I think it's an interest created as a youngster. I was part of the Boy Scouts movement. And Boy Scouts naturally spend a lot of time outdoors on camps. And so we spent many hours outside a campfire being regaled about stories up in the sky and up in the heavens. And I think this is what sparked an interest, which caused me to make investments that I think my family is not that excited about, on big telescope at home. I suppose the passion comes from recognizing that most people, walk the earth looking down. Very few people actually look up at what's above you. And yet there's a whole world out there that's interesting, looking at what might look at
so
stars.
I look in the sky, and on Saturday night I saw a lunar eclipse, the moon covered partially, and lots of bright stars. What do I interpret in that when I see it?
Well, firstly, let's make the distinction that I'm not an astrologer, so in case anyone thought we're going down that path. But what's interesting, just take people who look up at the sky, the typical night sky, the brightest stars that you're seeing up there are in fact planets. And very few people know that they're looking at planets. You know, do you know that you could, through a very simple telescope, look up at Saturn and see the rings of Saturn with the naked eye just from your backyard somewhere in Johannesburg, Durban or Cape Town. And so just looking at it and seeing what just looks as a bright light in a different way causes one to think about everything that you do, to say you can't judge things at face value. You really have to take the time to understand it, and it sparks a lot of interest to go and learn more.
Well, I checked with my astrologer what is meant by a moon covered, and basically the view was that it starts to bring in a new era post this lunar eclipse, in a positive era. I'm a Gemini. Star sign?
I'm Gemini too, and I thought you were going to say it signals the start of this sort of this new series of of movies that have been released timed with Halloween.
All right, so Gemini, I interpret that you are objective, open-minded, worldly, cosmopolitan, and that although you rule with a presence, you love that people can make decisions for themselves.
Keep going, I'm enjoying this.
Thanks so much for your time, Ajen Sita. He's the CEO for Africa at Ernst Young. And he has said that the big challenge is convincing people that Africa's time has come as businesses enter the continent, making sure that bureaucracy is less cumbersome. We do know that capital inflows into Africa are still at a modest 3 to 4% compared to what we're seeing in Asia. Definitely it's a new momentum, but it's a new momentum that Ernst Young believes it can capitalize on as they lead businesses into a new world. You've been getting the views and insights of Ernst Young's African CEO, lover of entrepreneurship, lover of the stars, lover of his family. Thanks for your time.